WYSU presents Action Sports Live with your host, Corey Christen, co-host Lincoln Williams, and co-host Quincy Carrier. This is Action Sports Live.
Hi, and welcome to Action Sports Live. I'm your host, Corey Christen, and on today's show, we'll cover the top stories from the past week in sports. We'll talk some Browns and Steelers football and NFL playoff scenarios, and we'll catch up on everything in college football playoffs and everything Ohio State and Youngstown State. But first, Kobe Bryant has announced he is retiring at the end of the season. Current NBA Commissioner Adam Silver released this statement, quote, "With 17 NBA All-Star selections, an NBA MVP, 5 NBA championships with the Lakers, 2 Olympic gold medals, and a relentless work ethic, Kobe Bryant is one of the greatest players in the history of our game. I join Kobe's millions of fans around the world in congratulating him on an outstanding NBA career and thank him for so many thrilling memories," end quote. Canelo Alvarez won a unanimous decision over Miguel Cotto to win the WBC middleweight title. This sets up a possible mega fight with Gennady Golovkin, the middleweight champion of the world. Knicks fans were thinking, what the hell, when they drafted 7'3" Latvian Kristaps Porzingis. But it looks like that pick is paying off dividends already. Porzingis ranks 3rd among rookies in scoring and blocks and 2nd in rebounds and double-doubles. This week, the New York Jets released defensive lineman Quentin Coples. The 6'6", 290-pound lineman, known for his physical gifts and quickness, developed a reputation playing football because he was good, but never really had his heart into it. The Jets did say his release was nothing personal, but just business. Executive Vice President of the WWE, Paul Levesque, also known as Triple H, issued a statement that ISIS has made threats directed at WWE and the Survivor Series event held in Atlanta on Sunday the 22nd, but they went off without a hitch. Is Johnny Football in danger of possibly being benched? A new video has surfaced of Manziel partying during the team's recent bye week. Manziel told reporters on Monday that he hadn't seen the video, although he could see the footage and it could be old. "It's all part of disappointment," Browns head coach Mike Pettin said. "It's a little easier to handle when it's a one-time occurrence, but when there's a pattern of behavior that repeats, it's certainly a cause for concern," end quote. And an update to this story, we have confirmed that the Browns have demoted Johnny Football to 3rd string, Johnny Benchwarmer. His future in Cleveland looks like what it could be, and that's coming to an end. Well, those are our top stories this week on Action Sports Live. Now let's bring in Lincoln Williams and Quincy Carey to talk YSU football. Gentlemen, thank you for being here today. How we doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. So let's get right into it. YSU had a disappointing season in Coach Bo Pelini's first year. Lincoln, what do you think was one of the major problems the team faced this season?
I think one of the things that you have to pan out is the QB situation. One of the things that they struggled at was offense at some point in times, and what you have to do with that is you have to bring in a QB who is a dual threat, but can also, manage your team. I think Bo used what he had when he came here, and he adjusted to it, and now that he has the off season to recruit, he can go get whoever he wants.
Yeah, those quarterbacks you talk about, Hunter Wells and Ricky Davis. Hunter known as the pocket passer, Ricky known for getting out of the pocket and running a little bit. Quincy, same question directed towards you. What do you think were some problems YSU faced this season?
I think YSU's biggest problem in this conference was that they weren't big enough to go physical with some of these big boy teams that came in here. If you look at the South Dakota State game, they got manhandled on the front line and trying to run between the tackles. Jody and Martin Ruiz are both good running backs and put up good numbers, but they're outside the tackle box running backs. You need somebody who has that big size there, can go between the tackles that we see all our other conference opponents have. Western Illinois has a big one. So does Southern Illinois. So we need those kind of big running backs in there. We also need more wide receiver play because it was just non-existent this year. Andre Stubbs had a disappointing final year. Itarius Harvin didn't do what he was planning out to do, and Andre Williams was a big disappointment this year, only putting up about 500 yards. So I think you just needed more production from your skill players. You just really didn't get any. And then when you have two quarterbacks going in there, no stability at the position, you get what you get in offense and the play calling.
Yeah, you mentioned Andrew Williams. He's graduating this year, so YSU's going to have to replace that, and kind of tying in with what Lincoln said. you have to get these recruits in now because they're at a lack of skill positions on the offensive side. The Penguins floated around 500 for the majority of the year, so Quincy, I'll go to you on this. Where do you think the Penguins go from here? Talking about the QB situation, talking about bringing recruits in, where do you think the Penguins would go from here?
Well, I mean, I think they're going to go up. I have the firm belief in that. I've seen this recruiting class. They're a lot bigger, a lot stronger. They have the 3-star Isaiah Scott coming in from Hubbard. So I think they're going to get a lot bigger, a lot stronger, a lot faster. I also think that this team's defense was, for a while, defense has been terrible over here at YSU.
Right.
And I think this team's defense was legit. We have Derek Rivers going to play in the NFL one day. We have Avery Moss coming back, who was a big player over in Nebraska, and we have Leroy, who also was another big player in Nebraska. We have a good defense, a really strong defense. We just need the offense to catch up with it, which is kind of funny because in past years, the offense has been what we need the defense to catch up with.
Exactly.
Now, Lincoln, you touched on the quarterback situation with Hunter Wells and Ricky Davis. Both will be back next season. How do you see this whole thing playing out?
What I see is there being a possibility of just looking at other options exactly. Now, I feel like they will take care of that situation, maybe using Ricky Davis more and developing him as a quarterback.
Yeah.
Because simply, he's a runner. And if you look at Bo Pelini's history, he's had a running quarterback throughout his career, or a dual threat quarterback. And you can do so much more. And even within this league, you need a dual threat quarterback. With these shifty defenses like Southern Illinois, North Dakota State, you need that type of quarterback. So as far as the quarterback situation, I can see Ricky Davis being a guy.
And many say that the Missouri Valley Football Conference, where YSU plays, is, you could say, it's the SEC of the FCS. It's just that talented. It's that deep. Bo Pelini knew what he was getting into coming in here. And granted, they floated around 500 all season. He was playing essentially with Eric Wolford's players without house money. Quincy, I'll toss this to you. What's your take on Bo Pelini's first year at the helm?
I mean, if we're looking at this and this coach's name wasn't Bo Pelini, how disappointed would we be? We kind of got the expectation that this team was going to go 12-0 and just run through the FCS because Bo Pelini's the coach, but he's only a coach. He's not a player. So you look at the schedule here, and you had home games against 3 top 10 opponents, and when you played them, except for South Dakota State, you showed good. But I think this team showed promise. I'm not going to be in the category of fan that's going to say that this team stuck and that this team showed nothing for next year. I think they have. I think they need to figure out the quarterback position. I don't think that Ricky Davis is the answer for that. He's had 3 years here, and he's been moved around the wide receiver. Kind of shows you where he's been at with his development, personally. But I think that Bo Pelini, his first year, being everything that's said, I mean, Tressel went, 2-10? He was pretty good, right?
Yeah, he turned out pretty well.
Yeah.
So on the quarterback side, you're more on Hunter Wells' side, it sounds like, right?
I think you need to look at a different route here. I like the freshman Nathan Mays.
I was going to say, let's not forget about Nathan Mays also.
So then tell me a little bit about Nathan.
Nathan is more of, from what I've seen from tape, he is somewhat of a dual threat quarterback. Nice arm. He's got a good football mind, but he still needs to develop to the game of college football. He's still, this kid came from high school. He's still got the high school mindset. He needs to know the game.
This is somebody who was a 4-year starter in high school, broke all his high school records, ran his offense for 4 years. This is a quarterback.
Right.
This is a guy you don't normally get here. And if he doesn't play here, he'll go somewhere else. And right now, Hunter Wells, he makes special throws, but he makes really, really average decisions a lot of times. And he'll throw a pick six. We've seen it happen too many times. I don't think he could be your quarterback, especially if he doesn't have any extra dimensions to offer you.
Right.
Ricky Davis, I mean, he's a good athlete, but they don't trust him to make any intermediate throws. He's tried to make them before. He's been like, 2 for 15 on those throws?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can't really trust that to be your quarterback going in every game, every out, because you just become so one-dimensional. Ricky, he runs the ball, but so does Martin and Jody, so you don't really add anything by putting him in there. So I think Nathan, if he can play, if he can run out there and he shows something in spring ball, I think this job should be his.
And even if it's not Nathan's job, what I've seen some schools do, they go out and get a JUCO quarterback and bring that quarterback in. So that could also be a certain option.
Right. Well, with this week's highlights in college football, I'll toss it over to my colleague, Lincoln Williams.
Let's take a look at with this week's highlights in college football. Clemson took on South Carolina. Let's look at some of the highlights. After a scoreless first quarter, Clemson QB Deshaun Watson took the ball around the right side for a touchdown and an early 7-0 to Clemson. Clemson lead. Then with under 5 minutes left in the half, Watson fires a long touchdown strike to Deion Kane. Watson was 20 of 27 in the game with 279 yards. In the final seconds of the third, Perry Orth with a pass over the middle to Farrell Cooper to cut the Clemson lead to 11 early. In the fourth, Octavius Scott fumbles and South Carolina scoops up the loose ball. Clemson had 3 turnovers on the day. Orth hands it off to Sean Carson for the touchdown. South Carolina would go for 2, and Lorenzo Nunez fights with his way for the 2. South Carolina is now within 3. On Clemson's next possession, Watson takes it into the end zone for his 3rd rushing touchdown of the game. Clemson hangs on and wins it 37-32 to remain unbeaten. Next, we move to Oklahoma versus Oklahoma State. Bedlam 2015 would be for the outright Big 12 title. First quarter, it's 10-7. Oklahoma State wins Samaje Perine Boo by 68-yard touchdown run. He finished with 17 carries and a $131 and 2 touchdowns. Then Joe Mixon on the first carry looks like he's trapped, but he goes through 66 yards for a touch. He finished 14 carries and 136 yards with two TDs of his own. Still in the second, Oklahoma up 28-10. J.W. Walsh throws a 32-yard pick six. Third corner, the Sooners are up a bunch. Baker Mayfield takes it to the bolstering his Heisman chances. Oklahoma rolls over Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma rolls by 5 touchdowns, and Coach Bob Stoops gets a Gatorade bath. 1991 Heisman Trophy winner Desmond Howard gets his number retired before the game. Ohio State's Ezekiel Elliott makes his mark early on with a big 66-yard run. 2 plays later, with that 60-yard run, 2 plays later, J.T. Barrett would keep the ball and run it for an Ohio State touchdown. Ohio State, therefore, takes the early lead with that touchdown by J.T. Barrett. Second quarter, Ohio State up by 4. Elliott punches it in for the score. OSU is now up 14-3. Now late in the third quarter, OSU is up 21-10. Barrett goes to left and cuts back right for the touchdown. OSU now up 28-10. After that, the fourth quarter, Elliott runs up the middle and over the tackler for the score. And with that score, OSU wins 42-13. Now here's a look at the top 25 scoreboard. With Iowa and Nebraska, 28.
Let's talk college football playoffs. And right now, it's looked like it's going to be Clemson, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Iowa in the playoff. On the outside looking in, we're looking at Michigan State, Florida State, and Ohio State, among others. So, guys, do you see any chances of any of those teams that are outside of the top 4 sneaking in before the season ends? We'll go to Quincy here.
All right, I definitely see Michigan State kind of sneaking in here. We don't know if Iowa's for real. They've only had 1 win against a top 25 opponent, and that was Northwestern. They did beat them pretty handedly, but they have not really been tested. So we'll see what Iowa's about against Michigan State. I also think that there's a big chance that either Alabama or Clemson loses, leaving way for either Florida State or Ohio State to kind of sneak in there in your top 4.
Lincoln, what do you think? Does it sit the way it currently stands, or does someone get in?
I say that it simply stays the way that it is now. These teams have been, most of the teams that are in the top 4 have been on a hot streak. I don't see Ohio State moving up. Unless one of these teams loses, I still don't see Ohio State moving in, just because based on them losing so late in the season. Now, if they get in there, then they get in there. But in reality, I don't think that Ohio State gets in.
See, now that's where the controversy has come in. If you're going to lose, you got to lose early.
Right.
Right. So look at Ohio State last season, losing at Virginia Tech in week 2.
Yeah.
And now they lose to, Michigan State in week, 11?
Yep.
And that's the problem with this whole system. You know, you can lose to Ole Miss at home if you're Alabama and not be punished for it. But Ohio State, they have 1 loss against a Michigan State team that's top 10 in the country. It's ill-replaceable. It's ill-fixable. You know, That's just my little rant on it, but
So we can kind of expand on this then. Do you think the playoffs should be expanded into 6 or 8, or at least 8 teams? We'll go to Lincoln here.
I've talked about it being extended to 8 teams. I think 4 is a little bit. It's too small of a window, and I know it makes it more competitive, but you still have to remind yourself, you're trying to get a bigger picture here. I think 8 is at least even. You have 4 teams going at it, and then you have another 4 teams going at it. But 4 is just a little bit too small right now.
Go ahead.
I'll do you one bigger. If you're going to do playoffs, do playoffs. None of this 14 play-in stuff. I want to have a full-out playoff. The FCS has it. Every other level of college football has it. Don't tell me you can't do it because of classes, because we know the NCAA does not care about class. It's doable. The FCS does it. Every other lower division does it. You could have home games. You could boost your revenue. All the business reasons are there to do it. And what if there's a smaller school that sneaks in here and gets into the top 4 every once in a while? Right now it's the big boys, Oklahoma, Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan State. I'm going to get tired of seeing the same 5 teams play for the same championship.
I agree with Quincy. I feel like if you do expand it and make it an actual playoff, some of these smaller teams can come in and therefore fight and put their chances up for the title.
So we're talking the non-Power 5 conferences. We're talking like a Boise State or a New Mexico, or if they were to do well enough.
And it takes depending on these voters and their biases out. It doesn't matter if they rank Alabama 2. If they lose in the second round, they're out. They can't be national championships.
Right.
Now they got to go through more hurdles and actually prove themselves as a team.
Well, yeah, look what happened last year with the Big 12. Baylor and TCU were both there in the conversation of being that top 4, and that conference didn't have a conference championship game. So that's where the discussion came in. Ohio State moved in just because of the beatdown they put on Wisconsin last year. But so we've covered YSU. We've talked college football. Let's go to the NFL now with the Browns and the Steelers. I want to just go real quick with the Browns. Johnny Manziel getting benched. Yeah. It's kind of a tough scenario. We're looking at the third-string quarterback now, Josh McCown. Obviously, he's not the future of the Browns. And that's where the national media has kind of come in. We're going to make some NFL picks in a minute here. But Johnny Manziel getting demoted to the third string. Josh McCown now going to start again. But him going out and partying in the bye week, what's your take on Johnny Manziel going out? He didn't get in trouble for anything other than the fact that he broke a promise to the organization that, hey, I'm not going to go out and do this. I'm going to focus on the work. I'm going to go be a professional now. And he broke that promise. What's your take on that?
Well, my take on it is if you tell your boss, hey, I'm not going to go out and not going to get drunk and I'm not going to be on Instagram. I'm not going to be making a big story about it. You make a story, well, you deserve to get benched. And Johnny's had this issue for a while. I mean, the day he got drafted, he got in trouble for it. He got in trouble for it all his rookie year. He went to rehab, got out, got in trouble. What do? He just gets in trouble every week. So are you going to reward that by letting him start on national TV?
Right.
Potentially earning this job and being the face of this franchise? Or are you going to let him do what he wants? So you have to punish him or else, you just look weak.
Johnny, third string. What do you think, Lincoln?
I personally think that the Browns shot themselves. The Browns shot themselves in the foot when they even hired the kid. You're hiring a 21-year-old to lead your team. You're coming from college, and he has no idea about the game, and you knew about his recent issues with partying and all these other different things. You should have analyzed that before you hired this kid. Now, I'm not defending Johnny, but I have been other players who have been out on the bye week and have had a drink. Rob Gronkowski goes out on the bye week. But we still need to assess the problem that the Browns are a struggling team, and that if any news that they're in the media, that's good for them because they're not always getting the best. But now I feel bad for Browns fans because they're always in negative news instead of positive news.
Well, let me add on to what you just said. You saying Gronk can go party, and you might be unfair that he can party, but Gronk's not a quarterback.
Right.
It's a different standard. You're the quarterback. You're the face of the team. You get all the praise when you win. You get all the hate when you lose. It's just part of the job. If he can't do that, he can't stay out the limelight. He can't stay inside for one bye week when he's about to play on national TV.
I completely agree.
What kind of decision maker are you?
I agree.
You don't deserve to be quarterback.
Well, the Browns play the Ravens tonight, Monday Night Football. Obviously, we mentioned Manziel getting benched, but the Ravens have concerns of their own with Joe Flacco, Steve Smith, Justin Forsett, all out for the season. This is kind of a wash game, but let's kind of talk about this. Who do you think is coming out with the win tonight?
Well, this is the toilet bowl, but
this is about the worst thing you can do to
this
viewers.
This is about a preseason game here on national TV, but I think I think the Browns can edge out a win. They've had 2 weeks of rest here to get whatever they have healthy. I think Josh McCown does have a good game plan with the Browns, and he did have 500 yards the last time that they played.
Right.
So I think the Browns might have the Ravens number, so they might actually sweep the Ravens. So yeah, I'm gonna go with the Browns on this one.
Real quick, who wins, Browns or Ravens? One word.
Dear God, the Browns.
It's more than one word.
Yeah.
All right, he's got Browns. Well, I mean, the Browns need a ton of help, and they need to start looking to add pieces this offseason, whether it comes with the quarterback, whether it comes on the defense in free agency, or if they're going to do it in the draft. Where do you guys see the Browns going into next season? Obviously, they're going to be a top 5 pick again, but Lincoln, what do you think the Browns are going to do for next season?
I think that they don't need to get another quarterback. Please, no more quarterbacks. Just figure out what you can do with the 2 that you have. Even if you can trade for one, that's different. Do not draft a quarterback. I would say go draft some wide receivers. They need a lot more length at wide receiver. They're throwing to a lot of short guys, 5'9", 5'11". I would go out and get a tall, big wide receiver, more like a big Calvin Johnson type wide receiver, if there are any in the market in college football. But I would go do that.
I mean, you got to look at what's available in the market in the NFL draft. There's a couple good quarterbacks out there. I don't really see any elite wide receivers. There's the one kid out of Ole Miss. But as far as where I think the Browns should go, I mean, you might have the number 1 pick in the draft this year. You might have the number 2. Your defense stinks, and there's a lot of good defensive pass rushers out in this draft. So Joey Bosa, Robert Nkemdiche, these are all solid can't-miss picks. My only thing is you can draft the quarterback. Don't draft another offensive lineman. We've drafted 2, and
Bust City.
The line's not good still.
That's about enough right now.
So just get a free agent or something.
Well, there's been some speculation that there could be a front office shakeup in terms of GM Ray Farmer or team president Alex Schneider. Do you guys think this is something the Browns address in the offseason?
I think it's something they should address. They have one of the worst front offices I've seen in the NFL. And that's pretty bad because there's been some other awful ones, but the Browns have had a terrible front office.
Yeah, but look at these hires that they've been doing. They've been hiring first-year, first-time office men, and then they've been hiring first-year, first-time head coaches. How do you expect them to learn this job in 2 years? You know, if you keep on firing them, of course they're going to stink because they're not going to have any security. You can't get anybody of good note, of any type of notability to take this job because you're the Browns and we stink. So you got to develop somebody, and you can't just keep firing everybody. So
that's true.
You just got to stick with what you got and hope he comes out through, right?
Well, looking at the Steelers now, moving on a bit, they lose Le'Veon Bell. Ben Roethlisberger's been banged up. They lose a close one to Seattle yesterday. They're still vying for a wild card. Not much to do there in the offseason, but how do you think Pittsburgh gets over the hump and gets in that playoff this year?
I think that if they still rally behind Big Ben, because Big Ben, no matter if he's injured or healthy, he's still striving for greatness. He's still striving to get out there and play for his team. I mean, he had Landry go down in the game, and then Big Ben is still hurt, and he comes out and wins the game for him last week. So I think that speaks to the resilience of this team and also what they can do. So I say rally behind Big Ben and get the job done, and you can still get in the playoffs.
Right.
Or I think they're not getting in the playoffs. There've been too many injuries. Big Ben's old. He's hurt all the time.
Oh, my gosh.
You can only throw to Antonio Brown so many times before defenses start catching up to it. So I don't think this team makes the playoffs this year. Cincinnati's going to win the division and leaves them to have to win a wild card spot. And I just think they're better teams in the AFC right now than the Steelers are as constructed. I mean, Le'Veon Bell's healthy. It's a whole other team. But right now they're too one-dimensional.
Well, we mentioned that close one the Seahawks and the Steelers had this week. The NFL's had some lopsided. They've had some tight games. Let's look at some key games going into Week 13 on the slate. Kind of do some picks here. First off, in the NFC, the Vikings. How about the Minnesota Vikings leading the NFC North now? They face the Seahawks at home, and the Seahawks are going for that wild card, especially over that big win in Pittsburgh. How do you see this game playing out?
Between the Seahawks and the Vikings, I mean, Teddy Bridgewater and Adrian Peterson have been playing great. I think that they prevail over the Seahawks simply because the Seahawks are not the Seahawks right now. They got a close one yesterday, but they're not playing Seahawks football right now.
Teddy Bridgewater and Adrian Peterson, I think they're just both better than Russell Wilson and whoever they're going to run out there running back because Marshawn Lynch is injured.
Yep.
The Legion of Boom, it's not going to be much of a factor because this team doesn't pass the ball. Minnesota doesn't pass the ball. They just run it with Adrian Peterson and dare you to stop it. And I don't think that front four of Seattle's going to be able to stop them. They haven't stopped anybody all year. So I'm going to go with Minnesota here.
Now, this may not mean much to most, but how about this one right here? Jaguars and Titans. Now, both of these teams are just a couple of games back from their division. They could still win the division. As bad as their records are, this is a big game for both teams.
Yeah.
We'll go to you here, Quincy.
I mean, it just speaks to how bad the NFL's been so far. It's like there's 5 teams over 500, and I think Washington's in first place at 4-5.
Yeah.
But speaking on the Jaguars and Titans game, I think the Jaguars can edge it out. I think they have a better team. I think Marcus Mariota's the better quarterback, but I just think the Jaguars have a better team constructed. They're not good by any means, but they're a lot better than the Titans. The Titans' roster is just kind of sad.
I agree with Quincy. I think the Jags come out with this win simply because they built a team around Blake Bortles, and the sad fact is Marcus Mariota, great quarterback, but he has nobody built around him. He's been thrown to a tight end for the better half of the season.
The tight end's been injured on and off the whole year.
Exactly. So I say the Jags.
One more here, just Sunday night football game. Colts at Steelers. Steelers coming off that tough loss to Seattle. The Colts, with 40-year-old Matt Hasselbeck, have looked just as good as they would with Andrew Luck. The Colts are in a division lead. The Steelers fighting for a wild card. This is a big game for both teams, Quincy.
Well, just like I said about the Steelers earlier, I think they're just running out of juice. They're injured, and it's starting to show up. And I don't think they're going to be able to outlast the Colts here. So I'm going to go with the Colts on this one.
I mean, I sadly agree. I mean, the Colts have been playing some football, so I'm going to have to go ahead with the 40-year-old quarterback leading the way.
This is a team that has a 40-year-old quarterback and a 38-year-old running back in Frank Gore. So
Does anybody remember when we used to make fun of Matt Hasselbeck for being so old, and now he's out here winning games, possibly going to the playoffs?
One more. Let's go one more because I do enjoy doing this. Texans at Bills. Now, Buffalo's been kind of a disappointment this year.
Yeah.
Houston is fighting for a wild card in the division as well with the Colts. How do you guys see this one playing out?
I see this one being somewhat of a shootout, just a little bit, just because the Bills, their offense has been somewhat consistent. Now they got Sammy Watkins back, and he had a great game yesterday. So I'm going to go ahead with the Bills.
I think this isn't even going to be close. The Texans are terrible. They're throwing out, what's their quarterback, Shane Graham or somebody like that?
Their quarterback's Brian Hoyer, ex-Cleveland
Brian
Brown.
Hoyer's hurt.
Oh, well
so,
then.
Yeah, they got a third-string quarterback out there in Houston. And then, they don't have a defense. J.J. Watt's the only player they have that's legitimate on that defense. And I think Buffalo wins this one. Tyrod Taylor's been hot lately. His weapons are good. So.
An interesting NFC South battle. Falcons at Buccaneers. The Falcons are on a bit of a slide right now. They started off hot beginning of the season. Tampa Bay was in contention for that division. They obviously lost to Minnesota. What do you guys think for here? I would go with Tampa Bay at home. I think Jameis Winston has played well. I think he's elevated his level of play, but how do you see this playing out?
I like Jameis Winston. I think he's going to be a great quarterback in this league. Good size, good arm. I think he's been coming together as late, and I think he's going to end up winning this game, go on that run. I think they might make the playoffs.
I like Jameis Winston, but I feel like he still needs that development. But as far as that night, I think the Buccaneers are going to go ahead and take that one.
Okay. Mention the Cleveland Browns. They get the Bengals at home this week in a bit of a revenge game. You talk about the rosters in the Browns. Is there any way the Browns could sneak this one out?
Is there a chance? Maybe. But is it possible? Is it realistic? I don't think so.
I think that this one is just going to go to the Bengals. They've been playing hard-nosed football. I think the Browns are just out.
Monday Night Football. This is kind of an interesting one, and I guess you can call it the NFC East Game of the Week because they always televise one nationally. Cowboys at Redskins. Let's go to Lincoln first. I like the Redskins at home. They're leading the division now.
The Cowboys, they had a chance to take off the number one team, the Carolina Panthers, and then they drop with that. So I think that the Redskins, the way they played last night against the Giants, I think that they might be able to take on the Cowboys.
One-word answer, Cowboys or Redskins?
Oh, it's going to be Redskins.
Redskins.
Yeah.
Well, that's it for Action Sports Live, and I appreciate you tuning in. For Quincy Carrier and Lincoln Williams, I'm Corey Christen. We'll see you next time on Action Sports Live.